Is a winner of 2016 and 17 Ironman 70.3 Oceanside. He went 7:44:29 at 2016 Ironman Arizona, which at the time was the fastest Ironman in history. And he took second at 2017 Ironman World Championship, just won the inaugural Ironman 70.3 La Quinta. Please welcome the legend, Lionel Sanders. How you doing, buddy?
You had to remind me of Oceanside before we... I was just calming down.
I was just sort of like going...
Just feeling good and everything.
You've had too many positives.
Let me just go do a quick 10-mile run.
You needed a little
right now.
quick negative bound or something like that.
Perfect. Back on track.
Back on track. So, speaking of Oceanside, when you look back at this year's Oceanside, I know you came here with you were on a little bit of a mission. You wanted to take Jan Frodeno, who is two-time Ironman world champion, and so much, it seems like Jan is sort of a barometer for you, right? Talk a little bit about just what Jan has meant to your career.
Yeah, he's been my greatest teacher. I won my first pro race in 2013 in Muskoka, so my head ballooned up, hitting it on doorways and everything, and went to St. George 70.3 in 2014 up against the very best guys, and long story short, Jan won that race 10 minutes ahead of me, beat me in every single discipline, and it was a massively humbling experience. And so anyways, I questioned, what the heck am I doing? I was like a miserable person to be around, and basically I learned a lesson that if I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to do it and devote my life to it, then I'm only going to do it for myself. I'm not going to do it for winning and all this sort of thing. I'm going to do it to do my absolute best on the day with the cards I'm dealt. And that was the first lesson, and I took that, and it was a great lesson, and I've carried it ever since. Then in 2015, I finally felt like I could duke with these guys, and came out of the water in Oceanside with I think a 4.5-minute deficit, and then bridged the gap. And Jan and I came off the bike side by side together. And actually, here's another lesson I learned: I didn't put socks on, and he took the time to put socks on. And at the end, well, long story short, he won the race, dropped me like a bad habit.
But only by a couple minutes.
And my feet were all bleeding and everything at the end, and it was an absolutely terribly painful shower. And ever since then, I've worn socks, actually. I said, if it's good enough for Jan, it's good enough for me. But anyways, we bumped elbows and everything, and it was another formative moment in my career where I said, okay, you belong here. You can actually duke with these guys. Even though I got dropped at 5K and still lost by 2 minutes, I started to truly believe in myself that I can compete with these guys. And then, of course, come into 2017, we were going to finally have a rematch. And I actually had, it's kind of weird, but I don't know if I should even tell people in public, but I had the picture of him and I running side by side together as my desktop background. I don't know, it's odd. Don't tell anybody I told you that, but...
you guys will keep that a secret,
keep
right?
It safe.
Yeah.
And so I stewed on that experience for, I just wanted a rematch for so long. And so 2017 comes along, Oceanside again, I'm finally going to get the rematch. Had a lifetime best swim, came out 2.5 minutes down. Just about to bridge the gap on the bike, and Jan pulls off with a flat. And
you wanted to change the flat for him?
Yeah, it was unfortunate because... there was more than just Jan and I in the race, because I certainly would have stopped and waited for a car and everything, and we'll change the wheel and everything, because I've been dreaming of this for 2 years. And so, long story short, it carried on, and that was the end of that battle. So now 2018 rolls along, and finally we're going to get the battle. And the teacher strikes again. And... well, I lost time in all 3 disciplines yet again, and I thought I had come so far, and so to lose time in all 3 disciplines was very difficult to swallow. But that's sport. So I basically went back and I said, "Is there more? Is there more inside of me?" And well, I'm still on that journey right now. And we all know what Jan did. He went and he was basically in the best 70.3 shape that has probably ever been created, as was shown at 70.3 Worlds later that year.
It was almost like when Jan had back problems. He'd won 2 years in a row in Kona, and then he had back problems, and Patrick Lange won, and Jan had to walk a big chunk of the marathon. And it was almost like he was a man on a mission, because He came to Oceanside. You'd won 2 years in a row, and he basically said, "Okay, your strength is the bike. I'm going to outride you." Then he goes to Frankfurt. Patrick Lange outruns Patrick Lange. Then he goes to South Africa, and has there ever been a better race than having Jan Frodeno and Javier Gomez and Alistair Brownlee and Ben Canute, with Jan running a 1:06 half marathon at the end of that to win? When you saw that, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I remember it actually. I was away at a wedding, and of course, I checked the stupid tracker in the middle of the night. I woke up just to go pee real quick and checked the tracker, and I saw that they were all together on the bike. So I was like, oh, it's going to be a running race. And I ended up falling back asleep, and then I woke up again another hour later, and I checked it again, of course, like 3 a.m. or something. And long story short, I was not able to fall back asleep. And it actually changed the whole trajectory of my season, because I was like, oh, I'm going to go to Kona. This guy's going to be here in the greatest shape that has ever been created.
Right.
And, what can I do to at least give this guy a run for his money? And so it was literally like 2 days later that we changed our flights and everything and went to Kona an extra
like a month early.
Yeah, an extra 2 weeks earlier than we had planned to try to become one with the island. Unfortunately, it backfired, but that was the sentiment going there.
You also had the mentality that here's this guy who's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, and he's now in the best shape of his life, and he could win 2018 and might retire.
Yeah, that was the other big thing, of course, was,
this could be your last shot.
What more is there to be done?
Right.
What would motivate you after I figured, in my mind, I was like, he's going to go there, he's going to break 8 hours, first man under 8 hours, win the race and retire. And, someone did end up breaking 8 hours,
Yeah.
but it just didn't transpire in that particular way. But, yeah, absolutely. There was like, I want to go there. I want to be part of this thing at least have some sort of influence in this thing. And so that's why we headed there a little bit early.
And looking back on that now, and even taking a step back, you go over in 2017, and I look at it as you had a great race. You come off the bike, you've got a 10-minute lead on Patrick Lange, you run your way into first place. Patrick has to run a 2:39 marathon to win the race, right? There's only one person who's done that before, and it's him, and he does it for the second year in a row, and he wins the race, beats you like 2 minutes, 2 minutes and 17 seconds, something like that, 27 seconds.
2:27.
2:27. Yes. 2:27, exactly.
I have that memorized as well.
You've got 2:27. He beats you by 2:27, and a lot of people would look at it and go, I had a great race, tip my hat. The guy had a better race. I ran 2:51 off the bike. If I run 2:49, if he runs 2:42, I win the race. But you came home and sort of changed a lot of things.
Yeah, it started. It's difficult to dissect the whole thing, while you're doing it. But I started off in the beginning of 2018, I think, on a good foot. But then that race in Oceanside really did change me, and I think I went about it the wrong way. And I basically said, I threw everything out the window. I was like, new bike position, new bike, new everything, and it just, I think it was just a series. This now we get into a whole different thing on self-coaching, and this is where one of the problems with self-coaching comes in, is because you don't have sort of a crutch or a third person looking in, giving you some good advice. You're saying, oh no, maybe your position could have used a little honing. I had some mishaps in the race. My visor and stuff fell off. These sorts of things. Maybe these sorts of things added up, and maybe you just didn't have a super great race. You know what I mean? Instead of, okay, this is the worst thing ever. I'm going to change my bike. I'm going to change my position. I'm going to change every piece of equipment that I have. I'm going to change my training, everything I've done, throw everything out the window that I've been working that's given me success just because of one race. And that's one of the pitfalls of self-coaching, is you don't have that that objective, looking
Right.
in, giving you some decent guidance, which probably would have been helpful there.
So it was really more the Oceanside race than
It was
Kona.
100% Oceanside, because I started the year off on a really good foot. Basically what I did in 2017 was I cultivated my upper limits to the best of my ability. I did, VO2. I started with a good periodization. I was, in the beginning of the year, was cultivating like 30-seconders, minuters, short running intervals. And then I slowly converted that to more VO2 max style intervals. And then I slowly converted that to threshold intervals. And then in basically September, really, I allowed myself to come down to more Ironman style training, which, then, because I was in such good shape, was 340, 350 watts. That was like coming down to low wattage, because there was several months where I never did an interval under 400 watts. Every single interval was done over 400 watts. I got to a point where I did 1 hour over 400 watts continuously. And even now, because I've let myself deteriorate so much over the last 6 months, because I basically did all Ironman training. Very, very, it's funny, we've had the same conversation several times where I've gravitated towards the middle and start thinking that doing race pace training is going to make you better at race pace. And the reality is that's not what makes you better at racing. It's cultivating the upper limits. And so that's what I did in 2017. 2018, I started on that foot. And I did, for instance, I came down this way in March and did it was called CVR. It was like the World Championship of Indoor Trainer Riding on Zwift. And I ended up finishing second there there were some good pure cyclists there. And like I set like a lifetime 10-minute best. I held almost 500 watts for 10 minutes. And so everything was moving, everything was in the right direction. And then I went to Oceanside and, it was a good performance. It was a really good performance, but Jans was just better. But when hindsight's always 20/20, he was in phenomenal shape. He set one of the best 70.3s ever done. And, a wise man would have, sort of tried to look more objectively and said, let's tweak a few things, not throw everything out the window and change everything. So, lesson learned.
So in the 2017 race, that was one of the things we've talked about numerous times. That when you have more than one Uber cyclist in the race, whoever gets out of the water first and bridges to the group, the second Uber cyclist, third Uber cyclist isn't getting anywhere. In fact, when I was interviewing Cam Wurf before this year's race, I said, do you see yourself coming out of the water? Like last year, it was you and Sebastian and Lionel all came out of the water together. This year, you added Andrew Starkowitz. You guys could work together and get through. He says, I don't know if that's going to happen again. And if anybody is even 30 seconds or a minute behind us, they'll never catch us. Is that true?
There certainly is. It depends on the wind, right? And this year was the best, probably maybe the best ever.
Might have been.
It was it was light winds on the way out, kind of a tailwind on the way back. So in those conditions, 100%. It behaves probably more like an ITU style race, and you'll see this more and more happening, especially in 70.3 Worlds, where the speeds are even faster. It behaves more like ITU style, sort of like a semi-draft legal type thing. So on the other hand, if you got strong crosswinds, different story. It's going to be every man for himself. But I learned that at 70.3 Worlds was if you don't get to the front of that race before basically that year was Sebastian Kienle and I think Maurice Claval and a couple other guys got to the front.
Right.
Game over. It don't matter. Don't matter in St. George, what happened in St. George or whatever, that you had a good bike split. The reality is when you get a 12-man draft line going and you get some real good guys on the front, that thing is going to accelerate really fast and suddenly everyone's going as fast as Sebastian Kienle.
Right.
And so that's the name of the game. I mean, that's the name of the game that we're playing. So you've got to swim is very, very important. And if you don't swim very well, then you better damn well be able to put out 450 watts until you catch the front of the race, in a 70.3 anyway. And so the same is, it's not as bad at Ironman World Championship because of there's an objective draft zone and that sort of thing. You've got the reflectors.
Right.
That's what's used. They're pretty close to 10 meters in between those, so it's much more objective. So it's a really fair race, and usually the conditions are also make it fair. But I mean, that's the name of the game. So either you evolve or find a different job.
Talk a little bit about Sebastian Kienle, because you guys have battled back and forth. And one of the things that Sebastian said recently in an interview we did, I said, so can you intimidate Lionel when you race? Is there a way you can get inside his head mentally? He goes, Lionel's a different beast because he really isn't out there so much to win the race. He's out there to sort of see how much pain he can inflict on himself, which makes it really difficult to try to think I can do anything to hurt him, because he's like, that's nothing. He told me that there was one race where he was heading, it was like a quarter mile to the finish, and you had a 3-minute lead on him, and you're heading back towards the finish, and he's heading this way, and he's like, Lionel seriously is going full out. He's got the race in the bag. He could be kissing babies. He could be high-fiving. No, he's digging as deep as humanly possible to hurt himself as much as possible. When you hear that, what do you think?
To be honest with you, it goes back to that experience in Oceanside, or in St. George in 2014. I said that day after, when I learned the lesson, I said, from now on, you do this for one reason only. You give me your absolute best effort with the cards you're dealt on the day. You get a flat tire, you change the tire, you get back on the bike, you give me your best effort to the finish. I don't care if it's for first or for 20th or whatever, it doesn't matter. And I live by that. That's how I race. So yeah, I mean, there's been stumbles along the way and that sort of thing, but when I toe the line, it's going to be in my mind, it's the last race I'm ever going to do. I'm going to give you everything I got. And so it don't matter if you're in first or second, the game plan don't change. So you better be prepared for that. When you toe that line, this could be your last race ever. And I really like racing that way. I think it gives a little bit more behind what
Absolutely.
you're doing. And so no, I'm not doing it to like hurt myself or something. I mean, I don't like suffering and that sort of thing, but I want to push myself and see what I'm capable of. And I mean, there's been like Kona. Kona this year was far from what I had imagined and my expectations of myself. I still get my absolute best effort on the day. I mean, you'll never know, like by looking at the paper, 3:15 marathon. That marathon could have easily been 4 hours. 3:15 was all out. That's all I had that day. And unfortunately, it just wasn't what I had imagined.
So when you have a race or you finish, like Oceanside, you race so well, and he was just better on the day. When you have this year's Kona, and you can't finish second last year, and then this year was 30th, that's when you come home, how do you reevaluate after that?
Well, what's interesting is I watched Sebastian, as we were talking about Sebastian, I watched Sebastian's Breakfast with Bob interview, and you asked him about me. And he said, well, we'll see if Lionel's already defeated himself. and that's how, I mean, we're all pretty in tune to each other. We all
Right.
kind of know what we're all doing and everything. We're analyzing each other.
Right.
And so now I can totally see guys who are probably analyzing me say, game over. And now a few guys have messaged me actually behind the scenes and said, to be honest with you, I don't mean this in any negative way, but I knew your Kona was over 6 months before Kona even came. And so I mean, yeah, that's what makes this year, what have made this year so difficult to swallow was I feel like I really defeated myself. Like the performance I gave on that day was not indicative of what I was capable of, and I feel like a lot of the reason why was my own doing. And that's, I mean, it's good. It had to happen. You know what I mean? I had to like kind of defeat myself to I guess learn the lessons that need to be learned and to be humbled and to grow and to move forward. And so, you know, it stings when it's happening, but when you start to come on the other side, you start to say, this was part of the journey, this was part of the growth, it needed to happen. I'm ready to learn, I'm ready to listen, and now that's where I am. And so now I've got a coach, working with Jerry a little closer.
Yeah, Jerry Rodriguez.
Yes, and got a bike fit coach. I'm gonna, quite frankly, I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is. I'm gonna do less talking, more action, and just become a better athlete, become a better all-around, truly better athlete. And I would never have went down this pathway without the performance in Kona.
So whenever I hear you say the word journey, obviously your journey is way different than most people's, especially the guys in the pro ranks, because you know you ran steeplechase, you were a runner in high school, but then in high school you went down a different path. You were hanging out with probably the wrong crowd, and I asked you once, you know, as you're drinking and partying, and a lot of people know when to go home, and I think you said I didn't have an off switch. Once I was out there, I couldn't stop. How long was that period of your life?
I mean, I wouldn't say everyone struggles with their demons. Everyone has
Sure.
demons. So you come to learn yourself. I've got an addictive personality, if you want to use something like that. That's how I am. I am polarized. I'm full throttle in a particular direction. And I directed that in a negative way. I wanted to be, when we were partying, I was going to be the best partier in this whole room right now. And very quickly, that can get you down a bad path. And yeah, I found myself in some rooms and things where I was competing against some really good partiers. And we got, like, it's true. I mean, it truly is what was happening. And then you start to lose yourself very quickly. And then you start to hate yourself, and you start to feel ashamed and some very bad emotions. And then you start to, that's a pathway that you don't want to go down. But it started with my personality and how I guess am oriented towards things. And so fortunately, I didn't go so far down that pathway. A lot of guys go down that pathway and never come back.
Right.
And I was blessed that I didn't go down that far. In fact, I remember sitting in a detox, and the guys, one guy's literally like, I think I'm about to have a seizure because he's coming hard off of I think he was doing methamphetamine, and he was coming hard, and he could feel himself about to have a seizure. And these guys looked at me, and they're like, dude, no offense or anything, but you're not that far down this pathway. You know what I mean? I've been shooting this heroin into my arm, blah, 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 for a long time now. You're good. You can get out quick. And that was a really big wake-up call for me. And so anyways, I was able to get out of it before it went too far. But I've also become cognizant of who I am, what my personality is. And so now that's what I've done. I've just taken the same talent, if you want to call it that, and directed it in a positive manner. But once again, those things you gotta, it always comes out. It's always coming out, the polarized, addictive personality. And Jerry really, he's a great guy. Jerry Rodriguez, Tower 26 Coaching. He described me really well as an addict, because I've worked with Jerry on and off now for a long time. And he's like, you're like someone you're once an addict, always an addict. You go to the meeting, you start to learn something, you start to feel confident. You stop going to the meetings because you feel like you've got it all under control. And that's what I've been doing. Like, I go to Jerry, I learn a couple things. I feel like I got it under control. I don't need you anymore, Jerry.
I've got my endless pool. I'll just look in the bottom.
I figure the whole thing out myself. And you see my personality's coming out again. And then I get myself in trouble again. And I come back crying to Jerry again. Please help me, fix me. And so I'm starting to learn, I'm starting to learn who I am, because that behavior has been coming out for years now, over and over, and repeat. And in a polarized thing, it comes out. So, for instance, I discovered vegetarianism and veganism, and I was like, threw everything out the window. I'd eaten meat and stuff my entire life, okay, for probably 3 meals a day, and I really liked the ideas and everything. I really liked the animal cruelty, all these sorts of ideas and things. Not getting into that, some health benefits, this sort of thing. So instead of saying maybe one day a week I'll try, I'll not eat meat or something. Instead, I say, I'm never eating meat again. I'm never eating any products whatsoever again. And that's my personality come out, and then you start to get yourself in trouble in there too. You start to get a little bit of deficits and sort of things, because I have no idea what I'm doing whatsoever.
You're just making it up as you go along.
I'm just making everything up whatsoever. Maybe a quick Google search or something, and that's what I'm using to inform myself. Once again, self-coaching. These are some of the problems that come. And so anyways, you start to learn. You're always learning about your personality, and I feel like I'm starting to get some real insight into my personality a little bit, and how to direct it a little bit better and keep myself on a better pathway.
When you were going down that wrong path, what was the lowest point for you?
Just shame, just such ashamed of myself. I have such good parents. My mother loves me, my father loves me, do everything, they're there for me, and then to just throw everything that they've done for me, just ashamed. I think deep down inside, you know what you're capable of. You always know what you're capable of.
Sure.
And when you're going down a bad pathway and you're just kind of throwing your talents out the window, and you have more to give, and you just take. It's probably just a deep shame in waking up, not being able to look myself in the mirror, brush my teeth,
You couldn't look in the mirror when you brush your teeth or shave or anything.
Ashamed of myself. That's just such a terrible thing to live, to be ashamed of yourself. It's your own self-creation. You create it yourself. It doesn't change the fact that, basically you hate yourself. You don't love yourself. And so that's probably, that's a crap feeling I wouldn't wish on anyone.
Were you ever suicidal?
Yeah, a few times. Yeah. Unfortunately, when you dislike yourself, you start to not want to feel those feelings.
Yeah. when did you hear about Ironman, and what did you know about it before you signed up for one?
I mean, Ironman came. That's the always how I know that I don't know anything is because I had no idea what Ironman was. It just sort of had the idea of like, what is an Ironman? I think I'm gonna do an Ironman, and so I Googled it and found out what it was, and it was this ridiculous event. But I really have no idea where or when or how that idea even came into my brain, and that's the really amazing part about the whole thing. And I still don't know where it came from. So anyways, I Googled it. It was 2009. I think it was sometime December or so of 2009. I Googled it. Looked like an insane challenge. Told my mom I want to do this insane challenge. How or why she believed that I was going to do it and not use the money for something else, I have no idea, but she trusted me, good parent. Gave me, sorry, gave me the credit card number and signed up for it, and the rest is history.
Ironman Louisville.
Ironman Louisville, 2010.
And then it was, how do I get down there, right? Now you've signed up for the thing.
Yeah, logistics has never been my strong suit. Still isn't, actually. Ask Aaron about that one.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man, how am I going to get there?
What am I going to wear?
What am I going to wear? All these things. I just had, chamois, big chamois, one, no top or anything.
Big
it's like,
sponge
pretty sure
in
you
the
have
water.
To wear a shirt in these things and
Yeah.
stuff. So anyways, fortunately, I had good parents, and they gave me a ride, got me a hotel, bought me some food, bought me a race kit. Still have that race kit, by the way, and yeah.
In 10:15.
10/14/31.
Okay, there we go. August 29, 2010. So Paul Ambrose wins the race. It's a multiple loop course. And Paul goes by you. And you see this guy running. And what are your thoughts?
Like, what in the world is happening right now? Am I hallucinating? Like, I never seen anything like it. It was an amazing, still to this day, I still don't understand. But
Because he looks so amazing.
I mean, the way I was feeling and the way he was moving was a thing of amazing thoughts. So, yeah, I remember thinking, like, afterwards anyway, thinking, I wonder if I could do something like that one day. And that's when the seed was planted, I believe, to try and see. I think he went around. I mean, you have to remember that day was record highs. I think he went like 8:15 or something, and still insane actually to think about.
Right. So then from there, obviously, the addictive personality, you found something you like. Did you jump right back into another race?
Yeah, actually, I had some good guidance then from Barry Shepley. I started working with. I finished that race. I went back to school. I had dropped out for a couple of years. I did cross country, and then that's when I met Barry Shepley, who was Canada's Olympic coach, in 2000. And we actually grew up in the same little town together and everything.
His family had a restaurant or something.
Yeah, uh-huh. And he contacted me, said, I see you did a triathlon. I see you did a running race. Are these the same people? Are you interested in triathlon? Because I didn't really, I was, the reality was I was 2 hours behind Paul Ambrose. I don't know why you would think that you could compete in triathlon. And
we get you a water.
I'm good. I'm good. And fortunately, I met with him and joined his triathlon team. And he gave me, sorry.
Oh.
Came down with a cold, unfortunately.
That's what happens when you go that fast out in the desert.
I know, dang. So anyways, I had some good guidance. I didn't jump into a race for actually quite a while after then. I had so much to improve upon. I mean, it was absolutely unrealistic to think that I could be a professional triathlete then. I was
so this is basically 8 years ago.
Yes.
And now you're one of the best in the world.
Still working at it, but trying to compete.
And when was your first pro race?
Muskoka, 70.3, 2013. And it was a long time coming, man. It was, I was, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a terrible swimmer. And, but I'm a lot better than I was then. I was about 2.5 minutes per 100 in those initial first year or two, and then I got it down to just under 2 minutes per 100 meters, and then 1:45 per 100 meters. And I mean, these are not times that you can even think about racing professional
No.
in. And then finally, when I started to get it down to like 1:30 per 100 meters, which was 2013 or so, that's when I started to think about being a professional.
And if you look at your, 2013, 2004, 2015, you win 3 Ironman 70.3 races, 4th at Ironman Texas, 5th at Mont Tremblant, and then your first Ironman, 14th, your first Ironman World Championship. When you went to that first Ironman World Championship, I mean, everything has happened so fast for you. You could be from an age grouper to a
It was
pro.
a bit of a whirlwind, yes.
Yeah, a
Still-
little bit of a
still feels
whirlwind.
like a
And what were your thoughts when you came? And now all of a sudden, when you're in Kona, you can talk the heat and wind all you want, but it's really the field. Right? The depth of the field is what makes that race so
Yeah,
special.
2015 was an interesting year to show how green I was or whatever. I wore a Camelback, a 2-liter Camelback, because I was so concerned with hydration. Once again,
It's a good idea.
self-coaching. Self-coaching. It's good sometimes, bad some other times. So I was like, I did Ironman Texas that year. I was like severely dehydrated. I think I took so it was, I don't know, you know what Texas is in that race.
Yeah.
It's pretty, as a Canadian, it's pretty darn hot and humid by my standards. I think I took maybe 4 bottles on the bike in the total on the bike. My sweat rate is somewhere in those conditions of about 2.5 liters per hour. So
Yeah.
do the math, 4 hours, it's 10 liters of sweat with 2, so I was about 7 liters or so down at the end of the bike. My vision was actually blurry coming off the bike, and then you run a marathon. It's quite challenging. And so anyways, I was like super scared actually. Like it's actually a bit of I think a biological fear, because I'd taken myself to such severe dehydration. So then in Kona in 2015, I was like, certainly not going there. I'll wear a 2-liter Camelback, and there's no way I'm going to be dehydrated this time. And that year, I was doing like some of these things I can't even wrap my head around. I did a 4-hour bike ride and consumed over 10 liters in 4 hours on the bike. 10 liters. It's hard to even wrap my head around. Polarized personality, always coming out. And so anyways, I did that same thing in Kona actually that year, because I had the 2-liter Camelback, and I believe I took 10 bottles on the bike. And then on the run, I had made like a full bottle holder, and there was the Pro Aid station. I took 7 700 milliliter bottles on the run, so about 4.9 liters or so over the course of a marathon. So that's something like 15 liters consumed over the course of the race.
You didn't
But
dehydrate.
anyways, I wasn't dehydrated. It was amazing. Probably didn't race that well either, but it just goes to show there's just so much to learn. It's the beauty of the thing.
But did you love that race right away?
Yeah, I mean, I went in 2014, and it was a cool. Once again, all these experiences come out. You're good at this. 2014, I went just to watch the race, and I remember. I don't know if you're supposed to do this, but I was out on the bike course, and I was right. It was Jan, it was Sebastian, Ben Hoffman. Who was it? Who was second in 2014?
2004.
It's Ben Hoffman.
Ben
Yeah.
Hoffman was second.
Sebastian, Ben Hoffman,
And then Sebi.
and then Jan.
Yeah.
And I remember riding my bike 2 miles from the finish line as all these guys are coming out, and I was riding right next to Jan. 15 of us, 15 person out there, hearing them breathing and everything.
So you're riding with them.
Yeah, the leaders.
And you weren't in the race?
The leaders. Oh no, I was just spectating. And
They're like, who is this guy?
that's where I fell in love with that race.
Yeah.
Was there? Yeah, because just the hardship, how brutal that race is.
Yeah.
To race that thing and to do it well, and to hear the pain that I heard those 3 guys in firsthand with 2 miles to go. Oddly, I said I want to do this one day.
And you
So-
did it meet up your expectations, besides the fact that you were...
Yes, it's brutally
probably
hard.
Bloated,
Brutally hard.
bloated a little bit.
Brutally hard.
So when you look back at all the races, it's funny, I was just interviewing Cam Worth, and he was talking about one of the greatest performances he'd ever seen was one of his first Ironmans, Ironman Arizona, where you went, 744, whatever that was. And he goes, listen, out of all the things I've seen in cycling and in triathlon, that was one of the most impressive performances. Do you look at that as, if you look at a triathlon as this is the best day I've had doing this sport, would that be the day?
That was my best Ironman, for sure. That's the best Ironman I've done in terms of execution.
Yeah.
In 2016, I took the ideas that we talked about of polarized training, of cultivating the high end. 2016 was the best I've ever done that because I prepared for 70.3 Worlds. And there's a real good lesson there, actually, that I'll take into this year. In 2016, I said, Kona doesn't exist. And I peaked for 70.3 Worlds. That's the best performance I ever done. It doesn't show on paper because, like I said, those lessons I learned about not making the front and all that thing.
Right.
In terms of pure performance, that's the best performance I ever done.
Because you're riding solo the whole
It's
time.
my highest power I ever pushed, and then I ran the 110 off the bike after pushing 365 watts for the 2 hours. And I was I was 2 minutes and 50 seconds down to the front. But anyways, I was peaked form for that. Unfortunately, I didn't train for Kona, and I went to Kona and had done no endurance or anything, nothing over 2 hours, no bikes, nothing like this. And so I was able to race really well for the first 5 hours. But unfortunately, the race takes 8 hours, and it was an absolutely horrendous next 3 hours. And I went from the fastest run split at 70.3 Worlds to the slowest run split one month later in Kona. But here's the interesting part, is I figured my hypothesis was like, my upper limits are through the roof right now. I just need a little bit of endurance, and endurance, when you're really fit, comes really fast. And so basically I was like, I'm going to do 4 to 5 long rides and 4 to 5 long runs, a couple of good interval sessions, and then I went to Ironman Arizona 1 month later, and I had the best Ironman performance I ever did as well. I had the legs to go the distance. I had a good swim. I pushed 318 watts for 4 hours and 5 minutes, whatever the bike split was, and then I ran a 242 off the bike. And that's my best Ironman as well. So interesting, in 16, where I cultivated the upper limits, and that was my focus, I have both my best 70.3 and my best Ironman performance. So there's definitely a lesson there that I'm extracting and taking in now to 2019.
It's funny because that's what Sebi talked about with you. He says he watched all your training, and 1 year you were doing all 60-mile bike,
That was
10-mile run.
I remember this.
Yes.
That was 2015. Basically, I said I'm going to do an Ironman like once a week. Basically, is what my goal was. And so I literally would. I actually still, to this day, my best 4-hour power I ever did on the trainer was 330 watts for 4 hours in practice. Actually, my best Ironman was probably in practice in 2015.
Right.
But I did 330 watts for 4 hours, and then I ran a sub-120 half marathon off the bike. I did 10 of these days. 10 of these simulation days over 300 watts on the bike to a minimum sub-120 half marathon. And I remember Sebastian, I love him. He was leaving the Oakley house. I was coming in, and I actually had never met him in real life. Well, I'd met him a couple times, but we didn't really know each other to really have a conversation or anything. And he was walking out the door, and just as he's leaving, he yells over the thing. He says, "Hey, Lionel, stop doing an Ironman every day." And he's had such an impact. Like, he's giving me these one-liners, like one a year I get.
Yeah.
And it's like the best advice I get all year, usually.
Because then the next time you train for 70.3, right?
Well, here's another one he gave me, actually, after Kona, after 15, actually. So I had bad performance, and not bad, it wasn't too bad. But anyways, he said to me, go back and read your blog posts. So it was 16. It was 16, now I remember it. He said, because I learned all these lessons that I just said in 15. After doing all this overtraining and everything, I said, no, it's polarized. You need more polarized training, less race-based stuff. He said, go back and read your blog posts from 15 and 16. Take the middle of those two, and that's how you train for an Ironman.
Exactly.
And he was right, and that is
sort of what you did for Arizona.
Yeah, that's what I ended up concluding. Yeah, indeed.
Love that. So this year, actually, you were just in the velodrome yesterday. Talk a little bit about that experience. Have you spent much time in the velodrome?
I did one time in 2015. I went with Garneau. We were testing garments and stuff. I got a little bit of opportunity to test position and stuff, but it was mainly for garments and that sort of thing. So this is the first time where I've really been able to do some serious trying to look into a baseline. So we actually, interesting, we were able to get a baseline on the position I rode one day prior in a race, which is really, really cool. And then we were able to try and work downwards from there. So the position I raced in Indian Wells, working with Ivan O'Gorman, my bike fit coach now, basically we wanted to err on the side of caution. We wanted to start off with a really conservative position, probably the most conservative position I'd ever raced. And basically so it wasn't very fast, that's for certain. But basically, long story short, we did a whole bunch of runs, and I think we were able to create a more powerful position, but also significantly faster, probably 15 watts faster than the one I raced on Sunday. So it's just the beginning. It's really nice working with Canyon because we're going to get very serious about these fine little details.
And you love that stuff, refining.
Yeah. I haven't taken it seriously enough. I think I've been more focused on power, and you need to be focused on power. Like, you have to have big power, but big power is not the end of the game. You also have to be able to transfer that power well, efficiently, and then you also have to cut through that wind nicely and drive forward with that big power.
And you have to run.
And then you have to run, of course. Absolutely. That's absolutely. And so those are all things that I was more focused on. Just push those pedals as hard as you possibly can. Don't worry about anything else. And that can get you decently far, but not far as I would like to go. And so now this is one of the beauties of this new partnership with Canyon is we're going to really hone those things. And yesterday was just day one. It was more of a baseline day. We definitely got some improvements. We got some good ideas, but we'll probably go back again in February and continue to try and improve. And it's really fun. It's like a whole new, like embarking on a new career almost. There's just so much to learn and to improve upon. And it's fun to be having done something for 8 years and feel like you're starting like a brand new career starting, next year.
Will you be back here in Oceanside in March?
Yeah, 100%.
Or April, yeah.
100%. Yeah, Jan already let it out in an
He's
interview
coming?
at some point that he might open up in Oceanside. We'll see. So I'll definitely hope to be in better shape.
I've
this
talked to
time
Patrick
and
Lange about
go.
coming over too.
Oh, that'd be great.
How about
That'd be
three
fun.
canyons on the
That
starting
would be
line?
fun.
That'd
be great.
We would like to see that. Get the big three here together. So when you're training out and you're training Palm Springs, I see that you're not spending a lot of time in the winter right now back home, right? You're here in Palm Springs, and then you're going to Florida.
Yeah, you come to California
you're
a couple
smart.
times. That's the problem, right?
Yeah.
Don't come to California if you don't want to
end up staying in California.
Staying in California,
Yeah, it's the best.
indeed. So, yeah, it's difficult to go back. I used to not have any problem in the winters, but admittedly, the winters are getting more and more challenging. So this year, we're thinking probably in the new year with my coach. He's in Florida. We'll probably go visit him for a few months, and then probably go home for a little bit, and then probably go see Jerry for a bit.
Oh, so let's see. I got a coach in L.A. I got a coach in Florida.
Trying
I can
to
see
pick,
what the plan is
pick
here.
coaches based on what
Where
the
they're
temperature,
based.
the average temperature
I
is
love it.
where they live.
Love that.
Indeed.
How about a round of applause for Mr. Lionel Sanders? Love that. All right.